As you can see, I've got my little buddy Benny here helping me today. Oh, yeah, look at that face. Benny and I are going to talk a little bit today about ADHD. We're talking things like trouble paying attention, trouble controlling impulsive behaviors, or being overly active. Now, these are all symptoms that commonly get tested and they get bucketed into a diagnosis of ADHD. Having talked to hundreds of parents about this diagnosis and the natural ways to help it, there's still a lot of confusion over whether a child really has ADHD. And common questions that come up are what are the causes and how can we help them without resulting into medication? So today we're going to look at ADHD through the lens of not just a diagnosis. We're going to unpack it to see the symptoms and then talk about how the brain and the nervous system influence these systems of the body that bring about the attention, the focus, and the impulse control struggles. Going back to the main root cause will truly help make sense of it and also find answers in addressing the difficulties. So parents, if you are looking for a medicine-free or a drug-free option, you may have heard from your school, from a teacher, from an administrator, or a counselor that medication is the only option or the best option, but that may not be congruent with your beliefs. And honestly, it's not congruent with mine either. Additionally, sometimes it's pushed on parents that it's probably genetic. Because if you could remember having some challenges with school when you were younger, and now your kids are having trouble with school, then it must be something that's passed down. Here to tell you, it's probably not the case. So today, we're looking at ADHD through a different lens. ADHD is not just a struggle in the brain. It's in the nervous system input to the brain. And ADHD isn't just hyperactivity. It can turn into a huge energy drain as we get older, especially later on in elementary school and in teenage and young adult years. So Benny says, if you know somebody who may be experiencing ADHD or may be dealing with similar situations, please share. If somebody close to you or you know somebody who may have just gotten an ADHD diagnosis or they're showing ADHD symptoms, please share this, help get the word out. There is this vast array of different things we can do that is helpful that doesn't result to throwing the kids on a stimulant medication. Now, it's important to know that ADHD is not just a busy, overwhelmed brain. The body can overwhelm the brain too. When this happens, it causes the central nervous system to enter the dreaded fight or flight mode. Next question that comes up every single time is, where does these stressors come from? Well, as a quick answer, here's the four most common key stressors that I see that are often overlooked. A high stress or a high risk pregnancy puts mom and baby into that sympathetic dominant stress stuck on state. It shifts them more into that fight or flight or protective state than from the parasympathetic rest, relax, regulate that honestly a growing baby and a pregnant mama should be in. Birth intervention such as forceps, vacuum extraction, C-sections and inductions. And remember, down here in South Florida with that C-section rate as high as it is, hitting that 70-ish%, that is wild, but this is rampant. This puts a physical component of stress, which is most commonly on the neck and the shoulders of a little baby, because remember, brand new baby, you go to hand him to somebody, the first thing you say is support the head, support the head, support the head. Well, in a C-section, it is a race for time, and whatever the doctor can get a hold of to help guide the baby out, whether that's an arm or a neck or a head, that is what they're going to use to help bring that baby out. It's a distraction force, which is the exact opposite of the pressure or compressive force that the baby would experience coming down through the birth canal. This is a lot of physical strain on a little baby that really can't do a whole lot of anything and puts a significant irritation, strain, subluxation, whatever you want to call it, into their neuromotor development. Another thing we see a lot is a fussy or a colicky infant, very refluxy, and they may have constipation struggles. We got to think eat, sleep, poop, those three cornerstones of that parasympathetic nervous system. If early on we see that there is problems with them, well, we know that that's probably heading down a road of a lot of neuromotor dysfunction. If early on we see problems with those three things, then oftentimes we know that we're having struggles within that autonomic, parasympathetic, rest, relax, regulate part of the nervous system. And finally, if we're seeing frequent or almost constant ear and respiratory infections before the age of 3 that are treated with antibiotics again and again and again. This further adds stress to that autonomic system and to the vagus nerve, which is that brain-gut connection, and it plays a huge role in digestion and immunity. Now, when that nervous system is overstressed, overtaxed, overworked, whatever you want to call it, it's punching that clock, getting overtime, it's not getting paid for it. With these 4 things, it's going to send signals to the brain to go into protection mode. And protection mode is that fight or flight part of our system. And it doesn't just go in a little bit of the brain. This goes widespread. The cerebrum, which contains the motor centers in the upper part of the brain, causes kids to not be able to sit still because in this fight or flight system, they know they may have to get out of there at a moment's notice. We see it in the midbrain, the limbic system, specifically the hippocampus, which is going to affect the way that we feel and process emotions, and it's going to interfere with our focus and attention, and most importantly, with that hippocampus, the formation of memory. And finally, the prefrontal cortex regions, which are going to have a very large effect with socialization, situational awareness, and the ability to self-calm and regulate. Now, as we're digging deeper, you can kind of start to put the pieces together that ADHD is not just hyperactivity. It is an overwhelmed body and brain. It causes brain fog. It has issues with focus. We see attention issues. And if it's not addressed, it is a huge energy drain for our kids. You kind of wonder sometimes how kids can be so wound up, but so worn out at the same time. And that's really common to see, especially when we're looking at a diagnosis or cases of ADHD. You'll see that mix of wound up and worn down. When that system gets stuck in that sympathetic dominant, stress stuck on fight or flight mode, and it's there for a long time, we're talking high energy, we're talking low sleep, we're talking constant stress. Eventually, it's going to burn out, and we're going to see demotivation, tiredness, and grumpiness kick in. Now, yes, genetics can influence some of these behaviors, but not nearly as much as we think or that we've previously thought before. It's really in the function of the body. The nervous system, the vagus nerve, and development play a much greater role than simply just genetics. In studies by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is a brilliant doctor looking at epigenetics, or the way that our genetic code is affected by our environment and things around us, it's estimated that no more than 15% of our genetic code determines our outcomes. Now, that means that other 85%, it's up to us. It's up to us for ourselves. It's up to us for our kids. And that means, parents, that even if you struggled with things like focus and attention when you were younger, or you do now, that it doesn't necessarily mean your kids will, or it doesn't necessarily mean that they also have to, that they're stuck with it. So to put it all together, kids that struggle with ADHD are most commonly going to have a significantly imbalanced and a dysfunctional nervous system. This condition is known as dysautonomia. That autonomic nervous system is not doing the job that it is supposed to. And most commonly with that sympathetic, stress stuck on mode, that fight or flight part of the nervous system, a common presentation is overactive or excessive responses in that fight or flight nervous system. But what comes along with that is an understimulated or a repressed, underactive, however you want to call it, parasympathetic, or the brake pedal, rest, relax, regulate side of the nervous system. It's kind of like a teeter-totter. If sympathetic's way up in the sky, that parasympathetic is going to be taking a back seat because it's being pushed aside as that sympathetic part of the system just charges right on. Benny's here to help me finish out and close this thing up for you guys. So my work as a pediatric chiropractor is on addressing subluxation or stress within that nervous system. We look at the vagus nerve, we assess dysautonomia, and we look at these challenges directly. Our goal is to get this sympathetic, stress-stuck-on nervous system to just turn off a little bit, to have a better balance. In turn, this activates that brake pedal, that parasympathetic rest, relax, regulate system, and we see kids sleeping better. We see their appetites return. We see them go into the bathroom more regularly because that part of the system can finally shine through and do the job that it's meant to do. Our bodies aren't built to be stressed out 24/7. And as much as we'd like to think that we're handling it well, in many cases, we're not. With each individual adjustment, we see change in these different parts of the nervous system. But the really cool thing is when you repeatedly see it time after time, then it actually makes a change that stays within that system. Kids are no longer stuck all the way in that sympathetic stress stuck on mode. They balance out. They change, and it is amazing. The term for this change over time and repetition is called neuroplasticity, and it's how your nervous system can relearn, reshape, and rework the inner workings, because we know that when we take a stress stuck on, tired out, worn out, beat up nervous system, and we adjust it into a more balanced state, that nerves that fire together, wire together. And when we make these gentle adjustments within that system on the frequency that we put together with a custom care plan that is tailored for the individual, it is the best way to get this system balanced back out. We start with a deep history. Moms, we're talking about pre-birth, we're talking about pre-pregnancy, we're talking about milestones, we are talking about it all. By the end of that first visit, I hope to know your kiddo inside and out. The inside, by looking at our insight scans, will give us an objective measure of the condition of your child's nervous system, so we know the address, the location of the major irritations. We know how well that brain is processing sensory information coming in and turning it into energy, and if it's burning way too much or way too little. And finally, we can visually represent the balance between that sympathetic stress stuck on and the parasympathetic rest, relax, regulate parts of their nervous system. We can also give it an overall efficiency grade. If you go out and buy a new car and it's supposed to get 50 miles a gallon, but you're only getting 35, we know that that's an efficiency issue. Our nervous system works in a similar way. If our nervous system is only 50, 60, 70% efficient, well, it's got a lot of ground to cover and it's got a lot of work going uphill. If you want more information, check out our blog post this week. It'll be posted within our link tree. Remember, moms, dads, there are medication-free options for ADHD. If you are not ready to jump into medicating or putting your kid on a drug that they will likely be on for a very long time, that's going to chemically change a whole bunch of things about them, take a peek. ADHD is not genetically predetermined, but it is rooted within the nervous system, and it can be changed in the long run. So if you're ready to make a big change in your kiddo's life, give us a call. We're here for you. We'll find a time to have a good conversation, to talk about your kiddos, talk about their future, and talk about how we can help. As a bonus, you'll probably get to meet Benny too, because he hangs out here with me most days. We can't wait to meet you. We can't wait to see you. Say bye, Benny. Benny will see you soon. Take care.